Here's something most small business owners don't think about until it hits them. What happens when one employee's life changes and it quietly disrupts your entire operation? An employee's parent gets sick. A team member loses childcare. Someone needs to reduce hours effective immediately. In a large organization, that might get absorbed. But in a small business, that change can ripple through the entire schedule. It can impact coverage, service quality, overtime costs, and team morale. And in that moment, everything comes down to one conversation. Not just what is said, but how it's handled. Because when that conversation is unstructured, you're not just managing a situation, you are making a decision that can affect your business, your team, and that employee all at once. Welcome back. I'm Bridget C. Lewis, and this is AI in HR, the RockstarBoss15, where we spend 15 minutes during lunch on Tuesdays walking through one prompt, one tool, or one practical process that helps make small business HR easier and more effective. Today, we're talking about life events and change conversations, because if we're being honest, most of the moments that trip teams up aren't big strategic decisions, they're conversations. Conversations that feel personal but carry operational consequences. And today, we're focusing on one of the most unpredictable ones you'll face as a leader: life events and change conversations. Not how to avoid them, but how to handle them in a way that protects your people and your operation at the same time. Let me give you a real example. In an assisted living community, a caregiver quietly asks to speak with her supervisor at the end of her shift. She shares that her mother has just been diagnosed with a serious illness and she's going to need to adjust her schedule, maybe reduce hours, possibly take time off. Now, the supervisor does care. They genuinely want to respond the right way. But in that moment, a lot is happening in their head all at once. They're thinking, okay, I want to be supportive, but how much flexibility can I actually offer? Who's going to cover the shift if her hours change? I don't want to say the wrong thing or promise something I can't deliver. And while all of that is happening internally, they're still expected to respond. And so they rely on instinct. They say things like, well, we'll figure it out, or let me check in with HR. But because they're balancing operations, compliance, and empathy all at the same time, the conversation becomes cautious instead of clear, and it often ends without real direction. And this, my friends, is where small businesses feel it immediately, because that one conversation doesn't stay contained. Now the schedule has a gap. Someone else has to pick up extra shifts. Overtime starts creeping in, all from one conversation that didn't land clearly. And here's the part that should stop every leader in their tracks. That same conversation, same situation can go completely differently depending on which supervisor is handling it. One supervisor might create very great clarity, but another one might create some confusion. Same organization, same life event, different outcome. And in a small business, friends, those differences compound. So now we don't just have a conversation problem, we have an operational problem and a consistency problem all at the same time. So the question then isn't, do managers care? It's more whether the organization gave them a structure to lead that conversation effectively. Because life event conversations feel unpredictable. They're personal, emotional, sometimes sudden. But while the situations vary, the types of decisions that they trigger are actually very similar. And when we treat them like one-off conversations, we force managers to do what? Improvise in high-stakes moments. So here's the shift. Instead of leaving managers to handle it well, we give them a simple structure to follow. Such as step 1, acknowledge, respond to the employee with empathy, putting that human first. Then clarify, understand how this is going to impact work. Third, guide. Explain to the employee the available options. Then document, capture the conversation. And last, connect, route them to HR or to whatever that next step is going to be. The conversation is still very much human, but the response is no longer left to chance. All right, so now let's make this practical. We're going to test this idea using a structured AI prompt. Before we run anything, we'll look at how the prompt is built, because good prompts aren't, about clever wording. They're about clear context. This particular prompt that we'll be looking at shortly is designed to do something very specific, not to replace the conversation, but to bring structure to it. We're asking the AI to identify where conversations typically break down, to translate policies into usable guidance, to create a repeatable conversation framework. Because if we don't define these conversations and how they should happen, we leave outcomes up to interpretation. So by now, you're very familiar with the prompt design. It's rooted in our HR snapshot. We have the company profile, operational challenge, and desired output. Today, we're going to take a closer look at the operational challenge, because this is where we tend to get vague. So we have a situation happening with an employee that needs time off, and we come to AI and we say, ChatGPT or Gemini or whoever we're using, I have an employee that needs some time off. How should I handle that? But that's not enough. What we need to capture is the actual moment, what's actually happening in real time inside that conversation. So here, we're not just saying the employee has a life event, but we're defining what the employee is asking for, what the supervisor is trying to figure out, what pressures exist at the same time. So we have empathy, staffing, compliance, uncertainty, all happening all at once. And this is important because if the challenge is vague, then the output will also be vague. But when the challenge is specific, when it reflects what's actually happening in the business, the AI can respond with something usable, not theoretical, not textbook, but something that the supervisor could actually use in that moment. All right, so we spent some time examining that operational challenge. Now let's switch over to ChatGPT so we can see what the output looks like. Notice this right away. This isn't general advice. It's responding directly to the situation that we defined. If you look at the breakdown section, you'll see it immediately calling out where supervisors tend to struggle, trying to balance being supportive while still managing the operations. That's not something that the AI guessed. That's coming straight from how we clearly defined the challenge in the prompt. Now look at the conversation framework. This is where this becomes really practical. It's not giving you broad guidance. It's helping you see what that conversation actually sounds like in the moment, what to say, what to ask, and just as important, what not to promise. And that matters, especially in a small business where one decision can impact coverage, scheduling, and the rest of the team very quickly. Now look at the decision support. This is where the structure really shows up. It helps the supervisor think through what happens to the schedule, when to involve HR, how to respond without overcommitting. And that, my friends, is operational clarity. And it only shows up because the challenge was defined clearly on the front end. So when you use this, you're not just generating content, you're creating a repeatable way to handle one of the most unpredictable moments in your business. And that's the shift. We're not removing the human side of the conversation. We're making sure the outcome doesn't depend on who's having that conversation. All right. So we took a look at one of the most unpredictable moments in your business, life event conversations, and we gave it some structure. Because, my friends, better systems build better workplaces.